This is Kirk Dieter with Round the Fire, and I'm joined today by two of my good friends, John Gierak, who is a preeminent author in the world of fly fishing, and Bob White, who is also an all-around outdoors man and great artist in many media, and they work together on a column that we produce for Trout Magazine, and I'm the editor at Trout Magazine. Get to work with these guys all the time, but I'm also a fan. I've been a longtime reader of John's and looker at Bob's art. And so it's fun to get around the fire and talk about these things and talk about the art in fishing. And want to kick it off by asking you guys, we're kind of in a moment now with all that's transpired in the last several months. There's been a real influx of people to the outdoors and open spaces and so forth. And have you seen that where you are? And don't you kind of think this is something that's going to define fly fishing for a time to come? I think there are more people fishing now than ever.
Yeah, I've noticed that. And I think it's, it's the pandemic shutdown. It's a safe, wholesome thing you can do outside. And I just think a lot of people, I know Colorado has sold something like 40% more fishing licenses this year than last.
Yeah.
And it seems like those extra 40% are exactly where I want to fish.
That's right. How about you, Bob? You catching some of that too? Where you? First of all, we should tell everybody where we are. I'm in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. John,
I'm in Larimer County, Colorado.
And I'm in Marine on St. Croix, Minnesota. And so, yeah, a lot of my friends have been hitting the water pretty hard, and I've been busy here in the studio, but they always send me photographs from the stream to kind of dig it in, twist the knife a little bit.
So let's talk a little bit about working together. How long have you guys worked together on columns and collaborations?
I think it's been about 30 years, hasn't it, Bob?
Yeah, I think that's about right.
I mean, it's long enough that I can't remember how long it's been. I don't think our beards were quite as gray when we started.
Yeah.
You're right.
This morning just for you guys, just so I would look the clean shaven part.
Yeah. I
blame
my beard on Bob.
What's the process? What do you write? Kind of your thing, John, and then show Bob, and Bob, you kind of illustrate, or are you working in completely different tangents and kind of match up a piece that you've been painting, Bob, to something that fits with John? Or I mean, how does that all work typically?
Well, from my perspective, I write the stories, I send them to Bob, and when they come out in the magazine, there's a beautiful painting next to them. That's all I know.
And Bob, you read the whole story front to back, and then what triggers what you do?
Well, first of all, I'm like the first person in the country who gets to read the new column. so that's pretty cool. No, I read the column, and then I try to distill an image from John's column that speaks to the story. Sometimes it's John writes very visually, so that's really easy for me to do. Sometimes it's a fish being released. Sometimes it's a little stream in the dripless. I try to encapsulate the meaning of the story into an image.
Do you ever suggest anything to each other in terms of your respective works? Have you ever, in 30 years, Bob said, John, you might want to change this word? Or John, have you ever in 30 years said, Bob, I'm not sure I like the exact color that you use here, or anything like that? Or
I've never done anything like that. Bob may have wished I'd changed a word here or there, but he never said anything.
No, there have been a couple times where I'll read the column and I'll think to myself, oh, finally, I get to do a painting of a muskie, or, but no, I've never asked for anything or suggested anything to John. It's always just fun to do.
I do send Bob drafts that maybe aren't exactly the finished draft that the editor gets, that you get, Kurt.
Yeah.
But I wait until I send him a draft where I'm not going to change anything fundamental. I might go back and redraft a sentence or a paragraph here or there to make it clearer what I was trying to say, but it's the sense of the story is always there.
And then it comes to Aaron Block and Samantha Carmichael and myself, and we barely touch it at all. We just put it in the magazine. So
well, you mentioned to me one time you go through and take out all the F-bombs in my stories.
I do. I have to do that. It's a family publication, but
yeah, I've well, after you said that, I've been doing it myself. It never occurred to me.
Well, it was kind of like an Easter egg hunt every issue. I would say, where is it this time? So anyway, it's all good. I have another question. You guys have fished and been to a lot of places and seen a lot of things. And I've been lucky enough to do the same in my career in writing and so forth. And one of the things that people ask me, they always reminisce about the good old days or when it was like here, you know, oh, you should have seen it here when this hatch was happening or the fish were so-and-so and blah, blah, blah. Is there any place that you could call out now that it's as good or better than it's ever been without giving away secrets or a roadmap for people to go crowd your spot? But I'm saying, is there a place that you think, you know, it's actually better now than it ever has been?
The place that I've been going to Labrador for 20 or 30 years it's as good as it's ever been. The last time I was there, it was just as good as it's ever been.
I'd have to say the same about the area in Alaska that I've guided and fished in too. I think it's fishing as good now as it ever has.
Which is great. I mean, there are so many conservation challenges that we face, and it seems like the lower in the lower 48, the more severe they are. We've had a tough summer here in Colorado, for example, with drought and fire and so on and so forth. But it's also good to look at the glass half full where it is. And some places in the fishing world are, because of the attention that people have paid to conservation and putting back into the sport and so forth, things are able to transcend and move along and be better. So I just wanted to confirm that. That was a loaded question. I didn't know what your answer would be. Yeah, I thought it was a 50-50 chance that you would both say, no.
Well, I have to say there aren't a whole lot of those places.
Yeah.
That I'm aware of, but there are a few.
Yeah. And my goal, I guess, and some of the stuff we do with TU and Trout Unlimited is to try to make more of those places. You know, that's the end of the day goal.
Yeah.
To get
well,
there.
One of the things they've done in Labrador is the day that place opened, it was catch and release on a brook trout. And I've been to other places up there where if you look at the guides log, there's the log in the lodge that's the clients, and then there's the guides log, which is actually true. And I've seen at well, I won't mention the lodge, but you see the average numbers of big trout go down over 30 years. Yeah. Because people were able to keep them. Yeah. Or keep some.
So in regard to your respective arts, John, I can't help but notice you've got a massive library behind you. You know, I'm going to ask you this similar question. You know, what is the closest book? What are you reading right now? And Bob, if I were to look in your house, what's hanging on your wall? What art hangs on your wall?
Right now, I'm rereading Tom McGuane's An Outside Chance, which is essays on sport, and not just fishing. There's hunting and motocross and all kinds of stuff in there. But it's an old book, and I enjoy going back to read old books because you always bring more to it as you get older.
Yeah.
And as you get older, you don't remember it as clearly as you thought you did either. So there's always surprises you forgot about.
Yeah. How about you, Bob?
Oh boy. I've got some work of friends hanging in the house, but typically I decorate the house with my favorite work.
Good.
Paintings of mine that I don't necessarily care to sell. There have been a few times where I've taken a painting off the wall in the living room because somebody purchased it and had to replace it with something for Tommy if she has favorite paintings. And there are a number of paintings that I've been instructed by Lisa that they're not for sale. So I'll finish a painting and she'll kind of walk over and take it away.
Yeah.
Occasionally.
You can always tell the paintings Bob wants to keep because of the price tags.
That's right.
That's right. But something you have to literally make him an offer he can't refuse, right?
Exactly.
There are a few of those, yeah.
That's great. Give me a sneak preview, if you will, of what's coming down the pike. What are you guys working on? How far out do you typically work? I know you've already given me your next column, and you're probably already well into spring or whatever, but what are some of the things that you guys are noodling around with?
Right now I'm working on, for trout, I try to work at least 3 quarterly columns out. So Bob has plenty of time to do the paintings, because I don't like to rush Bob, and Bob doesn't like being rushed. Although he's capable of being rushed. He illustrated a story I did for Gray's Sporting Journal once, and sent a digital copy of the painting while the paint was still wet.
Yeah.
But I don't think he likes doing that any more than I do. I think he likes having the time. So I work pretty far out on that. And right now I'm working on a story. Gray's Sporting Journal is coming out with a 50th anniversary issue. And Jim Babb has come out of retirement to edit it. And he asked me to do a story for them. So it was one of Babb's sort of famous for open-ended assignments. He wanted something ruminative, fly fisherly and ruminative, he said, which gives me a lot of room.
Jim Babb is one of my favorite writers, and I had a chance to go on a trip to Chile with him many years ago.
Uh-huh.
But he's also been really influential in terms of editing. And as I've kind of changed my role from writing at Field and Stream magazine to editing at Trout and Angling Trade and some of that, it's a different thing. It's like changing from playing lead violin to conducting the orchestra, And
Right.
Jim is like, I think, one of the best conductors ever anywhere in the world of writing, period, but also specifically fly fishing. So
He's my favorite story about him is he ran a story of mine once in the magazine, and I thought, well, that's nice. He didn't change a word of it. And then just out of curiosity, I went back and looked at my copy, and he had changed a couple of words, but his changes were better than mine. And it still read exactly, it was all in my voice, still read exactly the way I wrote it, except a few little things were just clearer, a little more succinct. Yeah. And I figure if he can fool the author, he's a pretty good editor.
No doubt. Bob, I didn't mean to cut you off there with the sidetrack on Jim. Is what we see behind you what you're working on now, or is that?
This is a painting for John's story about fishing in the driftless. So I think that one's due out shortly. The one I'm working on right now is a lot of fun for me. I try to change things up so I'm not always painting John fishing a river or a painting of a fish. One of John's columns coming up is about fishing in Alaska, and I really love painting aerial landscapes of Alaska, what you see from the plane when you're coming over the mountains. So I'm going to be working on that aerial landscape here over the next couple of weeks, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Cool. So I would be a bad editor and a bad friend if I didn't give you both a little time to talk about your respective books that are out. John, you've got many, many books, but your most recent one is Dumb Luck and the Kindness of Strangers, which I think is not only holds the lineup, it's actually one of my favorites. I got to be honest with you. I think you might be peaking, John. And then and then Bob, I just got this, and it's the Classic Sporting Art of Bob White, which is I believe the greatest coffee table book of all time. And I was really especially lucky because the fly that I got to choose was a Hexagenia that was tied by you, John Gierak. So it all comes together, and here we are on TV talking about this stuff. But tell me a little bit. I will start with you, Bob. Tell me a little bit about this book and the genesis of it. And you've been working a long, long time, but how did you decide what to include and what you didn't, and the balance and all that stuff?
Well, I grew up surrounded by books of sporting art, Ogden Pleisner, Frank Schoonover, all the classics, and always dreamt that one day I'd be able to, do my own book. And probably wouldn't have come to fruition if John hadn't encouraged me, and I wouldn't say badgered me, but he was pretty insistent that I go that route, and introduced me to some people in the industry that helped me and helped Lisa and I put together a proposal. And I'd never done anything like that. It was really sort of overwhelming. How did I decide which pieces to put in? It was I just kind of picked my favorites, and I wish now I'd included a few older pieces, but I think, as you grow in any profession, you hopefully are getting better. And so there are some older pieces, but there are some that I probably should have included that I didn't, but that's the next book.
There's always a sequel, right?
You bet.
And John, the latest, I just wonder how the well is always so deep for you as a writer. It's one of the things that I marvel at when I read your stories. So,
well, as you get older, the well gets deeper, right? The past gets farther away. And I think I know I repeat myself occasionally. You can't write 20 books without repeating yourself. And I don't remember everything I've ever written either. So I know stuff comes up, but I think no one's ever pointed it out. And as you know, readers are not shy about pointing things out if they think they find a mistake or whatever. And I think I may see the same things I've always seen, but I may see them differently with a little different perspective. And so, in a way, I've written the same book 20 times, but it's always different because I'm always a little different.
Yeah. You touched on something there that kind of triggered a thought for me, and that's it's a balance between homage to the past and respecting, there's a lot of tradition in fly fishing, of course, and but cutting a new path and looking for the future and all that stuff. And so how much do you find yourself looking over your shoulder, and how much are you still, you got things, rivers to cross and places that you want to get to that you haven't been to yet?
Yeah, I do. I can't give you a list of specifics, but I'm nowhere near done. There's still plenty of places I want to go, and I'm really itching to now because, I'm gone anywhere this year.
Right.
All of a sudden, it's not hardly safe to go out and get a cup of coffee, let alone get on an airplane and fly somewhere.
Right.
So, I'm talking with our mutual friend Mike Dvorak about some salmon fishing up in eastern Canada next year, and you just gotta see what happens.
I know. I mean, and Bob, this is an open question for both of you, but I've spent all summer wondering where I'm going to go next. It's like you're pent up. You're like a rocket. You're going to take off as soon as we get the green light to go someplace. Where in the world is it going to be for you, Bob White?
Oh man, it kind of depends on when the green light happens. You know,
Yeah.
Lisa and I usually host a week in Argentina at the end of January. You know, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think things will be over by then. I'm hopeful that next summer we'll be able to have a season in Alaska. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't guide full time anymore, but I host 2 or 3 weeks up there over the course of the summer and fall, and it was really hard to miss that. You know, I kept thinking, oh, tomorrow would be the day I would leave for this lodge, or you know, boy, I just would have come home from that lodge. So I'm hopeful about Alaska next summer.
Yeah, I never got a chance to get back to my home water in Michigan this year, and hoping that we can do that and do a long planned trip with you two guys to stop by and visit. It's a special place for me, and
Yeah, I'd love to.
western part of Michigan. We can sit around the fire, like they say, and tell some stories and all of that stuff too. Are there other things that I haven't covered with you guys that you think, and Dieter, you forgot to ask me this? I mean, is there anything that you want to touch on, or anything that comes to mind?
Not really, just that, you know, this whole coronavirus thing has really given me some, I mean, I thought when it came up, okay, look, you can write one pandemic story about what, you know, what the pandemic's doing to your fishing, and then you're going to have to be done with it. But it didn't work out that way, because it keeps coming up. It's like the weather. It's just, it's a constant. It's a thing you always have to consider. And so it's the thing that's kept me in Colorado this is the first time I've been in Colorado fishing for the whole year in probably 25 years.
Yeah.
And so that makes you a little ruminative about, all of a sudden you're back on all your old home waters, and you remember what it was like when you were 25 and 30 instead of when you're in your 70s. And then you start wondering about the nature of memory. Is it like, well, was the fishing better, or was I better, or am I remembering? Am I like have I taken a few small hard-won trout and made them a bunch of big trout in my memory? And so you have all that stuff to think about and write about too.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know. It just doesn't seem to stop. You'd think, writing on the same subject for 40 some years, you'd run out of stuff, but I think this either the subject itself is bottomless, or I'll just never quite get it right.
And it's an awful big canvas, isn't it, Bob? It's a big canvas as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that what I've learned this summer is definitely, you know, it's been a weird year, but fishing and friends and home waters have been more sacred than ever before. And so it's been a real honor for me to be able to kick off my involvement with Round the Fire with two of my good friends, talking about a sport I love very, very much, and sharing some stories and all that. And here's to many, many more, guys. I really enjoy working with you, and I hope we can keep doing it for a long, long time. I hope we can get on the river and wet a line together sometime soon too.
Yeah, we've got to.
That would be great. Yeah, it's been great seeing you guys. I mean, I miss fishing with John and seeing you around, Kirk, and so this wasn't like being on the river, but it was better than you know, staring at a canvas for half an hour.
Well, it's a little bit like sitting around the fire. So that's the idea of the show, and hope folks enjoy it. And really thank you guys for being on, and look forward to talking to you again sometime.
It's our pleasure.
Sounds good.
All right, buddy. See ya.